They didn't use it to see the future. They used it to watch it collapse. Every outcome, every question, the same end. It wasn't a window, it was a warning. And now, it's yours. They sealed the chamber, but the glass was never truly turned off. Only patient. It is not prophecy. It is recursion. And you've already seen this moment, haven't you?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Common Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Stuart James. Joining me today is Clayton James. This is Season 2, Episode 8, and we are talking about Project Looking Glass. How's it going, brother?
It's going good. I'm really excited to be on Episode 20. Did you know it's Episode 20?
I did. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That's huge. I can't believe we've done 20 episodes.
I mean, I haven't. But,
yeah,
but you have.
Done. Well, you're there for 99% of them, let's say.
I think this is like episode 15 for me.
Oh, well, I'm going to call it episode 20. We got that feels like a lot. It feels like we've been doing this a long time. It's been 5 months, but it's crazy to think the show is still younger than 6 months old. We're still a little baby of a show. But really proud of how much we've managed to accomplish so far. I feel like the show's going really well. I feel like we've caught our stride. Today we're diving into Project Looking Glass, another one of those connect the dots mysteries, hey?
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of keeps unfolding and folding, and there's everything but the kitchen sink in there, hey? What did you think when I first proposed this episode? I thought, you're going to love this or you're going to hate this one.
Honestly, I had no idea what you were talking about when you first pitched the idea to me.
You said you thought I was talking about Operation Looking Glass.
Yeah, you said Project Looking Glass. I'm like, you mean the Doomsday Plane? And you seemed really confused. You were like, okay, the Doomsday Plane, what's the angle on that? I said, no, isn't that what you were talking about? And then I found out about this whole other Project Looking Glass, and I kind of looked into it, and as far as conspiracy theories go, and I'm a big fan of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows me knows this. This is the type of conspiracy theory that I absolutely hate.
Oh yeah? So you did hate it, but you wanted to do it. Explain yourself.
It's the how you were talking in our Montauk episode. You were talking about how things can kind of spoil a good story, especially a story like this, where so many people get involved and start bolting more and more things onto the story, and the thing becomes so convoluted and crazy and unbelievable that if there is any actual root truth, you called it, that it is completely obscured and people aren't going to pay attention to it anyway.
That baby goes out with the bathwater.
Because the whole thing's become so crazy and convoluted and unbelievable. This is a story kind of like that.
Agreed. And I actually found, I feel like I found more credibility in it. Not the craziness of the story, but the more I weeded through things this week and tried to get to roots, that I found interesting, juicy stuff. Me too. I mean, I wouldn't say this show is about being truth seekers, per se. Like, we just like a good yarn, right? We're having fun here. I mean, we're going to call out bullshit if we feel like we're smelling bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? But, and we try to be intellectually honest, but we're not going to let any of that interfere with a good story. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's fun to go down the rabbit hole and then try and figure out what's what.
It is a really fun story, and I think it ties into a lot of things that some of which we've already talked about. It definitely offers some new angles and perspectives on some subject matter we've already talked about.
Yeah.
And like I said, the kind of story I as a conspiracy theorist, I just hate, because it's so unbelievable, and it's
Yeah, you just sound like...
You sound like a crazy person.
A nut job, yeah, when you're trying to talk about it. And
but
which I'm sure we're about to. And
I said okay, and I dug into it, and I found so many just interesting facets to it. And a good chance to revisit our friend Bob Lazar.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, shall we? I mean, really, that's what you could say is the beginning. This is where the term Project Looking Glass first appears.
Yeah,
in
it all started with Bob Lazar, because Bob Lazar, I mean, we found him to be really credible because his mainly because his story has never changed over the years.
Yeah.
Now, a brief recap. Bob Lazar supposedly worked at a base called S4, where he worked on a project. A
subunit in Area 51.
Yeah, he worked on a project that was reverse engineering the propulsion systems on, downed alien spacecraft.
Yeah.
And that project, the reverse engineering of the propulsion systems, that specific project was Project Galileo. And Bob Lazar just briefly references being aware of two other projects happening on the base. He has no direct knowledge of the inner workings of these projects, but he's aware of their existence. One of them being Project Sidekick, which was developing weapon systems, like particle-based weapon systems from alien technology, and Project Looking Glass, which he says was a study into the kind of time-altering effects.
Yeah, time distortion effects through gravitational lensing, I believe. Yeah, and he himself says he doesn't like to talk about those projects because he wasn't involved in them. He briefly got read into them when he was brought on board for his project.
Yeah, he's aware of their existence.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know any detail beyond they existed.
Yeah. So, but thus a can of worms is opened. We have the name of the project, Project Looking Glass.
Yeah.
And so then somewhere around 2006, a character steps forward, another whistleblower, another S4 employee, Dr. Dan Burrish.
Real name Daniel Crane.
Real name Daniel Crane.
Yeah.
Published a book under the name Dan Burrish, I believe.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the astronaut. But he claimed to have been working on that program. And as a whistleblower, he also claimed that he was constantly hounded by Men in Black and other Majestic 12 operator assassins to try and off him. Which we know Bob Lazar was scared of himself. Carried that Uzi around.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason why he was on the run is because he helped smuggle an alien being out of S4.
J-Rod.
J-Rod, yeah. Although J-Rod, I think, refers to his species, not his name, but they called him J-Rod.
Yeah, yeah.
And he smuggled him back to Egypt to help him escape through a Stargate.
Yeah.
And you can see already
it's
things
very
are going
straightforward.
Off the rails, right? So let's maybe rewind a little bit.
Yeah, well, let's rewind to Majestic 12.
Yes.
What is that exactly?
Majestic 12 is government, I believe it's CIA, funded program to research UFOs and downed spacecraft to reverse engineer their technology. Exactly what was going on S4. It's the whole Roswell thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Majestic 12, that's something we could do a whole episode on.
Absolutely.
There's lots of lore behind Majestic 12 and competing factions within Majestic 12 itself to influence human history in different directions.
Numerous television shows and stuff about this. That I mean, I'm sure everybody knows what we're talking about when we say Majestic 12 or Blue Book.
Yeah. So back to J-Rod. Now, J-Rod is, if you could describe J-Rod as Dan here describes him, he's what you typically consider a gray alien, right?
Yeah.
But J-Rod is not an alien.
No.
He's a human from the far, far distant future.
Like 52,000 years in the future,
yes,
right?
from a potential future.
Yeah.
Because there are branching timelines in this story.
Yeah.
A potential future that's kind of scarred by nuclear war and over-reliance on technology, and human beings are genetically degrading.
Yeah.
And unable to reproduce naturally. And the whole alien abduction phenomenon is basically these J-rods coming back in time to harvest genetic material from us to try to save kind of their own species.
Boost themselves in the future. Yeah. So, okay, so let's put that in a little digestible packet for the audience. So, in this story, gray aliens, as you know them, the little gray, big black-eyed aliens that we all know from the X-Files and pop culture, are not aliens. They're humans from the distant future that have colonized the galaxy. I believe in this story they come from the Gliese 587.
Yeah.
Or Gliese, I'm not sure the pronunciation. So in 50,000 years in the future, humans have explored the galaxy, they've colonized this other planet, and they've undergone a lot of genetic changes, and just evolution has continued over 50,000 years, and this is what human beings have turned into. But it's not a great state of affairs for the human race at this point in the future.
Yeah.
So they've come back to their origins. They can travel through time, so they come back to Earth again to do a genetic harvesting of a pure base of their species to perpetuate themselves, but also to make adjustments to the timeline so that they can create a better outcome for humans in the future. So that's what we're talking about here. That's how this all begins.
I don't even know what to say to all that.
Well, do you believe it? Are you on board yet? I mean, I love the story. I love the story. The story hooked me in right away. I'm like, great, I love this. I feel like I'm watching a TV show, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's very entertaining. But can we believe it or not? Can we believe it or not? So let's dig more into Dan Burish's story.
So Dan, who is he? He is supposedly a microbiologist. Why was he recruited into this project at S4? Why was he working with aliens? Or humans from the far future?
Yeah.
As he tells it, he was a part of a project where the government was cooperating with these gray aliens.
Yeah.
They were helping them in exchange for technology.
Yeah.
So that's why Dan here was recruited. Kind of like Bob Lazar, he tells a good story, and he's very convincing when he talks.
Yeah.
But you can't really find any credentials on the guy.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes in his credibility. You know, supposedly there's records of him working, as a parole officer, I think, during the time when he was supposedly getting his degree in New York or something like that. But he was working I forget where he was working, but basically on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
And he was like, the government would fly him out to New York on the weekends to get his degree or something. It's crazy like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, he says, the government covered up his records and his credentials, and that's why they don't exist, which honestly kind of dovetails with some of Bob Lazar's own tale. But Bob's own credibility it's more believable that he actually got educated where he said he got educated, and had the knowledge that he, pertained to have had.
Bob Lazar is actually the most credible person in this story.
Yeah, he is. And it just goes downhill from there.
When asked about Dan Barish, Bob Lazar will just say, and I quote, "I never met that bonehead."
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he doesn't believe his story. Nor does, I'm blanking on the name. The Las Vegas reporter that covered Bob's story.
God, I forget the name.
Knapp.
Yeah, George Knapp.
George Knapp, yeah. He was not a believer either when looking at Dan Barish. So immediately credibility issues.
Yeah.
But let's keep going down the rabbit hole. Let's keep going into the story. So this program that had time-traveling aliens, this program was able to build several devices that they could use to either travel through time or see through time.
Yeah.
And this involved these Sumerian cylinder seals.
Yes.
That were recovered, that apparently, when decoded or used in the proper sequence, would outline instructions of how to create these devices, and the CIA discovered this.
Yes.
And went about creating these time visualization devices. And so if you don't know what a cylinder seal is, like I didn't either, think of the wax seal stamps that they put on letters, back in the day. It was like a little seal. Yeah. But instead of just being a flat stamp that you put into wax, it was like a cylinder that you would roll over a piece of parchment, or
a piece of clay,
or
and it would
clay or leather or whatever that would leave an imprint when you rolled it out. And so if you had several of these that were part of this instructional manual and rolled them out in the correct sequence, you would get the instructions of how to build this machine.
Yes.
And this machine created a device. There's several different. I've seen different ones. There's one that kind of looks like a miniature version of the machine from the movie Contact, where it's like different rings rotating around a central point, to create an electromagnetic field. One is just like a yellow cube.
Yeah, device. That's called the Yellow Book.
Yeah, and one is a chair.
Yeah.
But all these devices are meant for you to see, so you could use these to see the future or the past, or what have you.
And things get a little bit muddy here because, again, this all has its genesis with Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
Making what amounted to an offhand comment about another project.
Basically just dropping the name.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Dan Barish kind of expanded on that. But as time progressed, many other people came forward who claimed to be part of this project and had their own take on what went on here.
Yeah.
So, and you hear these stories, and some of them contradict each other.
Yeah.
Some of them give just way different details. But basically,
Corey Goode is involved in this, isn't he? That Corey Goode guy.
And well, like you were saying in a previous episode, the story, once the story kind of takes on a life of its own, it does attract some actual crazy people.
Yeah.
And some
or people that just like to pile on to good story and capitalize on it. I mean, we're kind of doing it right now. I mean, we're not adding to the story, but we're covering it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like this whole field isn't kind of an industry unto itself, right?
Mm-hmm. But in a nutshell, through cooperation with the gray aliens, who are actually humans from the far future.
What did they call them? They had a term for it. It was like P-52s or something.
Oh, jeepers, I don't have that in my notes. But through our cooperation with them, as well as accessing these ancient Sumerian writings. Yeah. We were able to develop a device that let us see into the future. Yeah. What did we do with that? What was the purpose there?
I don't know.
Well, it was to look into multiple branching timelines and try to guide history in a way that would be
favorable direction.
Favorable.
Yeah. What would anybody do with
to the United States
being able
government?
to look into the future? You get the lottery numbers, of course. Yeah. What else would you do?
Not if you're the U.S. government.
That's how Nancy Pelosi plays the stock market so well. She's got one of these yellow books.
So again, the yellow book was actually a gift to the world elite from these aliens.
Right.
And the looking glass was actually our attempt to use earthly technology to recreate it. Yeah. And we based our schematics for it on these ancient Sumerian writings.
Yeah. Well, and the chair one, it sounds like these devices, all they basically did was because you needed an operator. You needed a person to actually interact with the device, and that person could view future events or past events or whatever, or probabilities of events. So, and the operator influences the result is the thing, right? Yeah. Because all you're looking at when you're looking at the future is a field of probabilities. Right? And so the observation has an influence on what is seen. It's basically remote viewing. It sounds a lot like the Montauk chair.
Yeah.
Right? So the device is very much like we talked about. We related it to Cerebro from the X-Men.
Yeah.
That's basically what these devices do, is just augment the already innate human psychic ability to remote view and enhance it. boost it, supercharge it. But yeah, so of course this launched a kind of covert international race to be the masters of this technology and to have the greatest power and ownership of it. It's speculated that that's really what Desert Storm and the Iraq War was about.
Yeah.
It was trying to secure these cylinder seal things because ancient Sumer is modern day Iraq.
Yeah. One of the many reasons that the United States invaded Iraq that had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction.
Exactly. But that's a fun part of the story, is that there's this secret war between clandestine intelligence agencies around the world to control this technology. Again, super fun angle. Great story.
It's like the temporal Cold War in Star Trek.
There's 1,000 different things you could relate this to. I just watched, the Indiana Jones, the most recent Indiana Jones, Dial of Destiny.
I haven't seen that one.
You haven't seen it?
No.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
You're really selling me on it.
It's not bad. I heard people say it was awful. I didn't think it was awful. I just, there's magic in a bottle. Those early Indiana Jones movies, it was lightning in a bottle, right? It's hard to recreate the same feeling, but it wasn't altogether awful. But just without blowing too much about the story or spoiling it, is a couple years old now, so I don't think I'm in too much risk of spoiling it for people. But Indiana Jones is after this artifact called the Dial of Destiny that was built by Archimedes. And it basically can predict where fissures in time are going to open up and create passageways into the past or the future. And of course, the Nazis were trying to find this technology during the war. And, the opening sequence is, an AI CGI'd version of young Harrison Ford with an old man voice, fighting Nazis to try and get a piece of this device, which is what's the actor we like? Mads
Mikkelsen?
Yes, he's the bad guy. So there's a reason for you to watch it, because
Hannibal's in it?
Hannibal Lecter's in it, yeah. But anyway, it's all about time travel. It's all about a device that enables you to travel through time, right? So all I was getting to with that is that the pop culture allusions and references to this are everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a little bit of the reason why I feel like this is just too good of a story. It reads like fiction because I think it incorporates fiction into it.
It reads like a science fiction story.
Yeah. But does that mean we should throw the whole thing out?
No, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. I find it fascinating we're talking about the Sumerians again.
Yeah.
So many things seem to tie back to them.
Yeah.
And I mean the Necronomicon, H.P. Lovecraft, Nikola Tesla was supposedly very much obsessed with the ancient Sumerians. He believed he was channeling. He wasn't so much inventing things. He was channeling and remembering ancient Sumerian technology.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I was just watching a video on Nikola Tesla before you came in, and talking about how much Nikola Tesla was invested in kind of the Vedic texts and the kind of East Indian spiritualism and how it related to modern physics. Help me out here. I'm losing my thought.
Nikola Tesla, he kind of saw himself as like a Prometheus-like figure. He invented a lot of things that we take for granted today, like alternating current.
Yeah.
Very much involved with the creation of modern radio. He also had some
Transistor.
some pretty wild ideas about free energy, being able to harness electricity just from the air wirelessly.
That's where I wanted to go. Yeah, the more I was looking at Tesla, the more it was reminding me of the electric universe stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think Tesla would have been an electric universe guy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right? He was very much headed down that road. He was definitely developing an alternative way of looking at electricity and electromagnetism than we understand it today, or he at least was on the verge of a much higher understanding.
Yeah, and he talked about temporal manipulation too. He talked about how resonant frequencies could alter space and time.
Yeah.
And
through basically gravitational lensing, right?
There's so many different versions of this looking glass story.
Yeah.
And the looking glass device, it was gifted to us by aliens. It was based on alien technology. It was based on ancient Sumerian texts. It was based on Nikola Tesla's unpublished papers, which were seized by the U.S. government when he died. Again, I talked about how he invented all these things we use today, but towards the end of his life, he was talking about, harnessing free energy from the air. He talked about building a death ray.
Yeah, and he'd even written to the Queen of England and wrote to the English, and he wrote to the French. I don't know, but he sent this letter out to world leaders to say, "I've got basically a super weapon."
Yeah.
Because the Second World War was on, right? So he was like, "Let's talk. Let's have a discussion. I have this weapon that could change the face of the war, possibly end it."
Yeah.
Which he got no reply to. It's a lot like us when we send letters out. No one replies. We have so many good ideas. There's so much we could do, but no one replies to our letters.
I haven't lost hope.
We're the same as Tesla, right?
Yes,
But anyway, so supposedly he had one of these death rays locked away in a locker in his apartment in New York. And when, as you say, when Nikola Tesla died, the FBI seized everything because they didn't want other international interests getting a hold of his work, because I think they knew it was of such great consequence. But who actually seized some of Tesla's stuff there?
Well, here we go.
I'm handing this one to you because I know you want it.
Who was the technical specialist that the U.S. government assigned to review all of Tesla's work? So, upon his death, all of Nikola Tesla's property, all of his unpublished papers, they were seized by something called the U.S. Office of Alien Property, and
not referring to little green men aliens.
No, not those aliens. Yeah. But Nikola Tesla, he was living in New York.
Yeah, internationally.
He was not born an American.
Yeah.
He's Serbian. Anyway, the U.S. under this office had the authority to, seize this man's unpublished work because they were concerned, this prolific inventor, could his unpublished works, through his will, find their way overseas, where they could potentially harm us, fall into the hands of enemies.
Yeah.
So they seized all of his stuff, and the specialist that they assigned to review all of his unpublished papers was a man named Dr. John Trump, who is the uncle of current U.S. President Donald Trump.
Small world.
Yeah, that is an interesting connection.
Yeah.
And so
I was just surprised to see that Donald Trump's uncle was like a genius.
Yeah.
A professor.
Yeah. Actually, very well respected electrical engineer, physicist, and inventor who did a lot of work for the U.S. government during World War II.
Yeah.
And so Dr. John Trump reviews all of Nikola Tesla's unpublished work and finds, supposedly, that none of it poses any risk to the U.S. were it to fall into...
Officially, he did not find a death ray.
Yeah.
They say.
Yeah. But I find it interesting that you see Donald Trump now, this man's nephew, and he's saying a lot of things about how the U.S. has super weapons that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting reading this now, that his uncle was the man who reviewed Nikola Tesla's unpublished papers.
You know where this stuff eventually ended up taking me this week? Was down a very, I guess, an adjacent rabbit hole of the secret space program. Mm-hmm. So I ended up watching a lot of Richard Dolan's stuff. And anyway, I kind of got sidetracked because I was all in on the looking glass stuff, and then the little tangents kind of took me in other directions, and I kind of went really deep down this, like I say, adjacent rabbit hole, which I think just needs to be a different episode.
Mm-hmm.
a little ways away that I'd like to do on the secret space program. But that's basically where I went with it and that's where when I say that kind of kernels of truth that I found out.
Well, that's the thing about this story. You can go off on so many different tangents with this story.
It connects to things that might have, or that or could very well have roots of truth to them.
Yeah.
With much more better paper trails and evidence trails to support them. And that's what I think has happened here is, a good storyteller is going to grab pieces of real world information and other good stories and incorporate them into yours.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I feel like's happened here with our progenitor, Dan Burrish, the first whistleblower, is I feel like he's borrowed a lot. He took the initial idea from Bob Lazar, and then he incorporated a lot of other aspects of things related to secret government projects and UFOs and secret technology, and baked it into his own little pie.
Yeah. So, is there anything to this? Is there like an actual? Do you think the U.S. government actually has or has attempted to create a device to either travel to or look into the future? Do you think there's anything to that?
I would bet yes.
You know
Honestly, I would bet
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely, I think so. Because, we just talked about MK Ultra, a project like that.
Yep.
It's all documented. Or
Montauk Chair.
We have some documents about that. We have Project Stargate.
We know Majestic 12 existed.
Yeah.
We know Project Blue Book existed.
Yeah.
Those are real things.
And it's not as outside the realm of possibility as you might think. I sent you that article, that Popular Mechanics article yesterday.
Yeah.
It was not the best written article, but it talks about some wild stuff. Just experimenting with time. Apparently, they have this meta material now that they kind of project an electromagnetic wave onto it.
Yep.
And this material causes this electromagnetic wave to reflect back, not just in space, but backwards in time.
Yeah. Like
effect can precede cause.
Yeah.
It was a hard article to make sense of.
It was.
But this is work that is actually being done.
Yeah.
Is experiments in time manipulation, and that's a Popular Mechanics article, very public facing. What goes on that we don't hear about? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course they're looking into this. How successful they are or were or will be with it, who knows?
Yeah, and I did put that, you sent me the link, so I did put it in the show notes, but I'm sorry, I just about interrupted you, but I stopped myself. Trying to get better at that.
It's all good.
What I was going to say for the audience is just if you do go look at that link, you might as well just read the headline and maybe the first two paragraphs. Beyond that, it just turns into gobbledygook. And maybe it's just my own limit of understanding of what they're talking about. But I found that with science reporting, the state of modern science journalism, I think, is really awful. It's devolved into clickbaity headlines that are very misleading and.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's that. I also did put a couple other links in there because I was just talking about Richard Dolan and Secret Space Program, and I did click to a couple other article links just talking about high-ranking U.S. military officials kind of not really having hot mic moments, but kind of dropping little hints in speeches or whatever about the state of kind of space-based technology. Mm-hmm. Kind of hinting that it might be far more advanced than is publicly known.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Right? Those examples are out there. Right? Yeah. And that's why I included those links, and that's why I brought that up, is because it's just it speaks to a level of credibility that there is maybe these operations going on under the surface working on these exotic technologies.
Yeah.
Right? I do think that's going on. But let's talk about what some of the more fun stories are that have come out from the supposed operators of these devices. What have they seen? and what have they been trying to do with this technology?
So apparently, and again, there's multiple different takes on this story from multiple people, but there's a couple of common threads that emerge. In that while this project was in operation, Project Looking Glass, what they kept seeing was two possible futures. Endless variations on two possible futures.
Yeah.
One it's kind of a good future for humanity.
Yeah.
Humanity
one where we sort out all our
spiritually and becomes like a Kardashev Type 1 civilization.
Yeah.
And we live in
unified, technologically advanced.
Yeah, we live in a utopia, basically.
Yeah, eliminate poverty.
Yeah, and the other future ends in basically apocalypse.
Global war and destruction.
Dystopia.
Yeah.
War, destruction, enslavement for humanity.
Yeah. And supposedly that's the road that the P-52s went down.
Yeah, they came from the bad timeline.
Yeah.
Now, why was Project Looking Glass supposedly shut down? This is where we tie into another story people might remember, because the closer they got to the year 2012, sometime just prior to the year 2012, the Looking Glass device stopped working.
Yeah.
It wouldn't see past the end of the year 2012. And what they took this to mean is at some point during that year, some decision was made which locked us into one of these timelines.
Right.
And now the Looking Glass won't show us anything.
So it was a temporal switchbox moment, right?
Yeah.
That's it's a singularity moment.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why no one could see past it.
Yeah, and there's multiple interpretations of this story, that the Looking Glass couldn't see past the year 2012, and basically we're committed to one timeline. Which timeline is it? Is it the good one or the bad one? There's some disagreement over that. Again, and there's some people who say that the world actually ended in the year 2012.
I know, I've heard that particular theory as well. Yeah, the world actually really did end on December 21st, 2012, and we're just in a different timeline.
Yeah, or we're living in some sort of simulation, or we're living in some sort of post-reality echo. I've heard the phrase used.
Or have you heard of the quantum immortality theory?
Yes. I'm so happy to have the opportunity to discuss that theory.
Okay, by all means then.
So basically there is an interpretation of quantum physics called the many worlds hypothesis.
Yeah.
In that, in any possibility that can happen does happen.
Yeah.
Reality is constantly splitting into new copies of itself. Mm-hmm. Anything you can think of, there's a version of reality out there where it did happen.
Yeah, because every choice that every single person makes branches off like an infinitely branching tree.
Yeah.
So fractally going on forever.
What quantum immortality, what that theory kind of states, is that you, from your own perspective, never actually die. Because if you ever encounter, I don't know how many brushes with death you've had in your life, how many close calls, how many near misses.
Been a few.
Yeah,
sure.
I've had a few too, where it's like, if that had gone slightly differently, it's a good thing it didn't happen that way. I mean, just this week, I was crossing the street on my way home from work.
Yeah.
This hatchback just veered into the intersection, just wasn't even looking. Yeah. I had the light. I was crossing the street. This hatchback just wasn't looking. Nearly ran me over.
Yeah.
They saw me at the last second, slammed on the brakes. I had to dive out of the way.
Yeah.
If both those things hadn't happened,
yeah,
that little hatchback would have run me over.
Right.
If that had played out slightly differently,
yeah,
I probably wouldn't be here doing the show.
Yeah.
And every time something like that could happen,
let's say it
both instances do.
Yeah.
But your
Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, your consciousness, your mind will kind of jump to the version
that's still alive.
Universe that's still alive.
Yeah.
So in any kind of situation where you could die, there's also a possibility that you won't. And that's kind of the route that your consciousness takes. So from your own perspective, you are immortal.
Yeah.
You will grow old and
at
die.
Least up to the point, where you die of natural causes.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you'll reach a point in your life where, probabilities will collapse.
Yeah.
There's no getting out of this.
Yeah.
But, from everyone else's perspective, you might have died multiple times already. An infinite number of times, actually.
Yeah.
But, from each of our own perspectives, we'll all live to be and are to 120 or however old is theoretically possible for a human being to live.
Yeah. I forget how we ended up here.
Well, we were talking about branching timelines.
Yes.
And how Looking Glass started, or it stopped working because apparently the timelines collapsed.
Right.
After the year 2012, we've passed kind of some point of no return.
Yeah. So which do you think we're on? Do you think we're on the good path or the bad path? I mean, things have gotten pretty wild since 2012. Think about everything that's transpired in the years since 2012. Pretty wild ride.
I think we're drifting towards dystopia.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. But they've got a new date. There's a new switch box in our future, right? I think 2030 is the new staticky point in the future that we can't see past with the time machines.
According to which version of
I can't
Project
remember.
Looking Glass?
I can't remember.
Is it Bill Wood's version?
I don't know.
I want to talk about Bill Wood just briefly.
Sure.
I don't want to talk about him too much.
Go for it.
But I want to use him as an example of stories like this attracting very questionable characters.
Yeah.
So Bill Wood, he was another supposed whistleblower about Project Looking Glass, claimed he worked at S4, claimed to be a former Navy SEAL, and he had his own version of the story. He was very much a proponent of the idea that the timelines collapse in 2012. Mm-hmm. And he believes we're on the good path. We're on the good path.
I don't know how he figured that one out.
Yeah. So he do you remember QAnon?
Oh yeah.
That whole
QAnon
nonsense. It's probably still a thing. I don't want to get into QAnon. I'll get the show in trouble if I talk too much about QAnon. Yeah. I don't want to get into it, but he's a very QAnon-like figure.
We're already being shadow banned.
Yeah. we can talk about that later. But Bill Wood claims he was a former Navy SEAL. He worked at S4. One part of that story is true. He was in the Navy. He was dishonorably discharged when he was found guilty of sexually assaulting his sister-in-law, who was 11 years old at the time.
Jesus.
Bill Wood, after all this, Bill Wood is actually not his real name. His real name is William Brockbrader. After his real identity was kind of revealed in these conspiracy circles, he quickly fell from public view. He didn't give interviews anymore. He is currently wanted for failing to register as a sex offender. He is facing 10 years in prison, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Okay. And
pardon me, how does he relate to the story again?
He was one of the whistleblowers. He was actually a very well-known whistleblower on Project Looking Glass.
What was his contribution? What was his stake in the story?
He very much popularized the whole timelines collapsing at 2012 narrative.
Right.
And that we're on the good path.
Right.
He made these QAnon-like statements like, trust the plan, the future's already written.
Right.
Anyway,
he's currently wanted.
Yes.
And about.
Yeah. But he's actually one of the more popular characters in this story. Yeah. One of the more listened to whistleblowers, I'm making air quotes, in this story.
Right.
Again, just an example. You got to take all these people with a huge mountain of salt.
Yeah. I mean, when I started trying to dig stuff up on this, I found a lot of links and references back to Project Camelot. I don't know if you ever followed Project Camelot.
I've heard of it. I haven't spent too much time on it. It's basically like a platform for whistleblowers to share their stories about these shadowy government projects.
Yeah, I never paid too much close attention to them. they definitely have a reputation of not being credible. Mm-hmm. Not that every story they covered was total nonsense, but they platform everything and take it all at face value, kind of thing. So I don't want to discredit it if that's somewhere you like to go. And definitely if you just want a good story, hey, maybe that's a great source. If you're trying to, find truth in any of this, maybe not the best resource. That's all I'll say about that.
Well,
if you just want a juicy story, then by all means.
This comes back to like my original thought on this story when I first kind of looked at it. So this is the kind of conspiracy thing I don't normally like, because I like my conspiracy theories to have kind of credible witnesses, maybe some documents.
That's what makes them compelling, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes you want to pay attention to that story. Is you're like, oh, there might be something here, because there's some puzzle pieces that I can put together to create a picture. Mm-hmm. Don't feel like this particular story has that. No,
but it is fascinating, and it
is fascinating, and it connects to so many other things. Like we said, Tesla, the Philadelphia experiment, and the secret space program.
Yeah.
A lot of fun stuff. Majestic 12. Like, I love the Majestic 12 stuff. I ended up, another kind of adjacent rabbit hole I went down was the, oh God, what's the name? It's like the lizard, but they're not aliens. They're dinosaurs that evolved and now live in the earth.
David Icke?
Yeah, well, it connects to David Icke.
Yeah.
But no, it's like this Swedish doctor or something interviewed one of these creatures and
oh, jeepers,
released the transcripts of the interviews, and it goes into a bunch of detail about the history of the lizard people. Anyway, that's a fun one. That's maybe another I forget the name of it. Anyway, that's another episode.
But
I think.
Kind of back to 2012, there's this narrative that the timelines collapse at 2012.
The world did almost end on 2012. There was a massive coronal mass ejection from the sun on just like December 19th, 2012, that just missed the Earth. Like, if it had erupted a few hours differently, but it ended up going out in a different direction and Earth wasn't in its path. But if it had been, it could have been a Carrington-like event and knocked out the world's power grid and effectively ended civilization.
And maybe it did.
We just narrowly missed it.
Maybe it did.
Maybe in another timeline.
Or maybe in this timeline. And maybe we're actually like far, far in the future. And this is a simulation that's been recreated.
And we're plugged into the Matrix.
Some benevolent hear me out here.
Okay.
Some benevolent super intelligence, either organic or artificial, Kardashev type 3 or 4 civilization has found our dead planet and was able to, someone with that much technology, able to kind of measure every particle in the universe. Well, let's do that, and let's create a simulation of it. Let's rewind the clock back, and let's see how this civilization would have gone if it had actually survived. Let's give these humans the ending they deserve, even if it's just an illusion. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that's why since 2012, it feels like culture seems to just be recycling itself over and over and over again. Maybe that's why we have
just AI slop. Yeah. Everything around us is basically AI generated slop.
Yeah. Maybe that's why
and degrading in quality as it recycles its own slop.
Maybe that's why we have Mandela effects, because there are inaccuracies in this simulation. And there's contradictions in world history. Mandela effect, it's a byproduct of the simulation being not quite perfect. What do you think of that?
I find that completely incredible and baseless.
But just like most of this story.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right. I mean, we're at a decent time. Do you have any other facets of this story you want to explore? I feel like we unpacked it pretty good.
Is Donald Trump a time traveler? Do you want to talk about the Baron Trump books?
I don't know what to say about that. I didn't find anything about Trump being a time traveler, but just his uncle's connection into this. You got to wonder if he didn't have, some insight into the future.
It's just interesting. Did you look into these books at all? They were published in like the late 1800s, and it's called the Baron Trump series. It consists of 3 books, and they're basically like science fiction stories. And the main character in the book is this little kid named Baron Trump, who goes on these like magical time travel adventures, and he's guided by he's guided by this older kind of mentor figure named Don, and who
wrote the books?
A guy by the name of Ingersoll Lockwood, and these were published in the late 1800s.
What?
And the last book in the series is actually a book called The Last President. And it involves, all this social unrest and chaos happening in a potential timeline after the very controversial results of an election. And this president in the book is from New York. He actually establishes a new White House in New York on Fifth Avenue, where modern-day Trump Tower is.
Get out of town.
Yeah.
This is just like those books that predict the future, just like the Titanic one.
Yeah, like The Wreck of the Titan. It was published,
that's wild.
A good 10 years before the Titanic, but it basically mirrors the exact story of the Titanic sinking.
Baron Trump freaks me out. Like, anytime I see him, in the background at a event or speech or whatever, I'm like,
yeah,
dude looks like a psychopath.
Yeah, a little bit.
As much as people hate Donald Trump, Baron Trump scares me way more than Donald Trump does.
And you've got Donald Trump here. Is Donald Trump a time traveler? Well,
oh God, someone's about to ring my doorbell.
He's.
We might have to pause here for a second.
Okay.
Okay, we're back, folks. Clayton, you were very rude to that Girl Scout.
Yeah, well, she shouldn't have mouthed off like that. Anyway.
Don't want any of your damn cookies.
Anyway, where was I? Donald Trump, the time traveler.
Yeah.
Well, lately, he's got Elon Musk kind of dutifully following him around everywhere. Elon Musk, who has claimed in his own words to be a 3,000-year-old time-traveling alien. Elon Musk has said that. Look it up. What exactly is happening to reality?
I don't know.
Whatever happened with
Project,
whatever happened with Project Looking Glass clearly broke reality.
It's the Hadron Collider. Yeah. It broke the Matrix.
Yeah.
Everything's coming unraveled. It does feel like that. But I don't know. This isn't a news channel. But yeah, it's hard not to look at it. It does feel like world events are just coming really rapid fire these days, and I don't think there's necessarily anything mystical to that. I don't think you necessarily need to invoke these crazy ideas of branching timelines or interference from alien civilizations to explain that. I think that could just be the cycles of civilization, turning.
Yeah, I think society is definitely reaching an inflection point. You've had, like, in that time frame, in the past decade and a half, we've had just this huge surge in technological advancement.
Mm-hmm. Feels like a perfect storm.
Yeah,
brewing.
You've got all this political polarization getting worse and worse, and it's like you said,
psyops through the media,
the news,
people's thoughts,
like global events. Not only are they just coming so much more rapid fire than they used to, but they feel a lot more theatrical, surreal, almost scripted. We were talking about Plague Inc. a few episodes ago.
Yep.
And part of that game is, you're looking at a map of the world while you're playing the game, but there's this news feed at the top where you're just reading these like ridiculous headlines.
Yeah, these crazy current events going on. Yeah.
And that's what kind of the news headlines feel like today. They just keep getting more and more ridiculous.
Yeah. It's true. Sometimes you look at news and headlines, things that are actually happening in the world, and you just shake your head and you go, what planet am I on,
Yeah.
or what timeline am I in?
So
Loki is another good one. Oh, I know you don't follow the Marvel stuff, but the Loki TV series, the whole thing is he gets sucked out of his timeline, and he ends up in this institution called the TVA or something. It's like a temporal authority that governs over all, and they maintain all the different timelines. And he ends up working for them. It's actually a really good show. But again, just infinite examples in pop culture to this stuff.
Yeah, you've got Star Trek. Starfleet had that Department of Temporal Affairs.
Yeah,
and they had this huge file on Captain Kirk.
Yeah,
never has one Starfleet captain committed so many temporal violations.
Yeah, it's endless, really, right? And I mean, we haven't even evoked, Back to the Future or Hot Tub Time Machine, another classic. But anyway, why don't we wrap things up?
So, reality is broken. Donald Trump's a time traveler. Elon Musk's an alien. Confirmed. Excellent.
All right, thanks for joining us, everyone, this week. Hope you enjoyed that spaghetti plate of an episode. I don't know how else to describe it.
It was fun, though.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We're a small operation here, folks, so please, if you're listening on a platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, share, please, any of those things would really help us out. We really depend on grassroots here, so if you like what you're hearing and like this episode and you know someone else who might enjoy it, please push it along, leave a comment, go to our website, contact us through there, or find all our other episodes, as well as our blog, our companion blog written by our resident AI demonic entity Loeb. And yeah, we'll catch everybody next week for another episode. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. If you're local to Calgary like us, enjoy the fantastic weather we're having. I think we need to crack a beer and get out into the sunshine and talk about something else for a while.
Sounds good.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.